Hello. On. Thank you. So I welcome you again to this session. Now I was talking about that you should read newspapers. Why it gives you the utility? Because you will be able to understand the sequence of events. So, and until unless you are reading that, you will not be able to. You will only, if the Vision IAS or whatever summaries that you read, it's only going to give you a summarized version. All you need to then do is scribble your own thoughts on it. Scribble whatever you have recollected. Now, I was showing you this. So what I do is I maintain a daily diary. By the way, people from D3, please take diaries from me. But my car is not here. So maybe some other day. So one page, the entire news should be there. If it's more than that, it is not efficient. You are not being efficient. And I was talking about that flatmate of mine that with him also, I mean, he used to read so much of newspaper. His analysis was really good. And then he scored the highest marks that I've ever seen in an interview. So he got 225 or I think 230 out of 275 in the interview. It was really good, but at the same point of time, you should not overemphasize on newspapers. It should not take you more than, say, half an hour to read it or 40 minutes to read it, plus say 10-15 minutes. Plus, if you want to, at the end of the day, you want to read some other stuff, maybe 10 minutes. Anything beyond 70 minutes a day, you are wasting time. Why? Because I'll statistically prove it to you in terms of statistics. You are reading something which is a random variable. In statistics, there's something called as random variable. You are reading something where you really do not know the probability of that coming is high or low. But when you're reading something like governance, you're reading something like ethics, you're preparing for case studies, when you're preparing for your essay, when you're preparing for your optional, the syllabus is very deterministic. You are preparing where the probability is much more high. So therefore, yes, current affairs is important. It gives you a lot of insights. It gives you a lot of insights for what you will write in your essay. It will see Shruti Sharma's answers, see essays, see this girl's Ishita Kishore's. You'll find her test series answers. So by vision or different. And I've myself seen that you can see that how much of current affairs she is linked it to. It might be a philosophical essay, but because of the fact that she was able to bring all of her knowledge into that essay, that she got good marks. So therefore, you will not generate it by reading just these summaries, or what I called is cheat notes. So don't just rely on them. Have a good understanding of this. And even if you don't have time, at least read the editorials. Because if it's an important issue, that means whether it's the Hindu or the Indian Express, both of them are competing with each other for the same set of students. It's like coaching institutes. Both these newspapers are coaching institutes. Understand the industry. Both of these newspapers are getting money from ads. This is what you see. Hindu newspaper, all ads for civil services. Indian Express, all ads for civil services. That means these two are in competition with each other. They have to outdo each other. The beneficiary is you. So whether you read the Hindu or the Express, it doesn't really matter. If it's an important issue, they would definitely cover it in the explained page. They would cover it in the explained page, or they would cover it in the, they would also cover it in the editorials. So therefore, that reading is important. And note making, just one page. Not more than that. You are going to waste up time. You will not be able to revise this. So this is my first stance, and read what I started my session with, is that if you really want to understand the budget in totality, read the business standard for today. At least for today, and people who are from economics optional should read business standard in general, at least the editorials. What you can also do is I'll send you a link of basically a WhatsApp group where all the newspapers are. I'm sure you must be knowing, you guys are smart enough to know where to get free newspapers. So basically, make sure that you have at least the online copies of all of this. You can just go through that if in case you don't get the business standard for today. Now, what are we going to do? Let's summarize what did we do yesterday, and then we'll try to analyze this year's budget and the priorities of this year's budget. It wouldn't take much time, but I would also like you to just take note of key things, because some of you are going to prepare for this year's prelims. So, and even if you're not able to, if you're not preparing for this year's prelims, at least you can see the paper. And just, I want you to take a look back on 2nd of February and see today's note, that if there was a question on the schemes that I mentioned in the prelims paper this year, which would mean that even if there is no question directly from budget, because the orientation of the government on these schemes was much more, the probability of these schemes being replicated in the paper will be much more higher. So this is called a smart analysis that you can do. The other thing that I tell a lot of students in general to prepare for, say, any topic, not just economics, if you have not seen the 10 years, and this is what since I've been in touch with so many of the successful civil servants, and usually when you are at LBSNAA, you get an officer training. You get an officer training who's an escort to you. So he's an escort officer for you. So with that escort officer, you can interact a lot, and because every day that escort officer also changes. My favorite question to all of them has always been that how was this successful attempt been different from the previous ones? Understood the question? That why do you think you were successful in this attempt in becoming an IAS or whatever your rank is, as compared to when you were unsuccessful? And the modal answer, understand mode, mean mode? The modal answer always used to be PYQs. This year, because in the first attempt, usually people do not do is that they have no time to prepare for PYQs. And once an aspirant covers the PYQs, at least from 2000, now it's 10 years, folks. You have sufficient amount of data to train on. I'm talking in terms of algorithms. So algorithms, you train the data and then you get an output. You have sufficient amount of data for 10 years on which you can train yourself better for the 11th year. What I'm trying to say is patterns in this paper keep repeating. And I've taught governance in one of the institutes here. And I was very surprised when I saw this, that every 2-3 years, it's a similar question that is being repeated. And in fact, I can easily predict the kind of questions that will be coming next year. What you should do is keep your UPSC syllabus and then read the questions and keep correlating which topic is it coming from, be it economics, be it any other thing. And you'll start to find patterns. You'll start to find patterns. In machine learning, we call them like clusters. You'll start to find these clusters of questions that are coming. You train yourself good on these clusters and you will do well. And don't worry if the first time, the time that you are taking to write answers is going to be long. It might take you 20 minutes to write an answer in the examination. You might need to reproduce that in 8. But because you've written a similar answer, there is a mental schema that you've created. The next time when you write it in a test series, you will take 12 minutes. The next time that you're going to write it, it will take you 10 minutes. And you have to train yourself to write it in 8 minutes. But that iteration will come only on the 4th attempt. That when you have written this 4 times, you will be able to write it in the desired time. And that is why you will see the maximum people clearing the exam is in the 3rd attempt. Because now they have understood the pattern. That what is the pattern? I don't want you to do that rookie mistake that I did. So these are typical rookie mistakes, especially for an aspirant who's going for a coaching. Because half the time you are in coaching, you do not have sufficient time to give it to yourself. So this is the hazard that you have to come out from, and keep PYQs as your Bible, whether it's prelims or it's mains. And keep correlating. Once you have solved prelims and the PYQs and the mains, your probability goes by a stepwise function then. It really increases. So this is something that you should do. Let's start our session. What we are going to do is quick recap. I have this bad habit, but I consider this to be a good habit because I really used to appreciate those teachers who used to revise what we have done in the previous class. So let's see what we had done. We had talked about these problems, and some of the newspapers have also mentioned, in today's newspaper has also mentioned these things. We talked about 4 or 5 problems that the country is facing. The first problem that we talked about was that the consumption is going down. And if you read today's Indian Express, have you seen today's Indian Express? The main article by Neelkant Mishra talks about that we are firing on only one engine. Has anyone read that article? We are only firing one engine in our growth. Remember C plus I plus G plus NX. Your overall GDP, these are fundamentals of economics. Your overall GDP, and GDP is from the demand side of the economy. Supply side is called GVA. Your GDP comprises of C, which is consumption, your household consumption, investment from the government, investment from the private sector, the government consumption plus net exports. Now, net exports is always 1% or minus 1% of your GDP. That means that NX, net exports, is not contributing anything to your GDP at all. When it comes to consumption and investment, consumption is 70% of the GDP, but the problem is that it is not firing. That engine is not firing. It is slowing down, which is seen by 4.4%. This is what is talked about in that article. And what is growing is government investment. Government is prime pumping the economy. It is called as prime pumping. In what sense? It is investing money. It is putting money into the economy by investing, not by spending. So it is investing in the economy, and by investing in the economy, it is able to lift the economy. That is what the government is doing, but the private sector has not been able to do that. The private sector has still not become part of that, and that is seen by the investment by the private sector. So you should be able to appreciate these facts when you're talking about the budget. That is an economist perspective. And the moment that you write something like this in your analysis, you take your answers to another orbit. The examiner sees that oh, this is an answer which is very different from everyone else. So this is one thing that we talked about. The second thing that we talked about is rural stress. We'll talk about what has happened in NREGA as well this year, because some of these schemes you will see. And remember, I told you that we have 48 trillion rupees to spend. Remember that equation? Hamare paas 48 trillion rupees hai. First of all, were you able to understand things in trillion today? If you have read the newspapers, that conversion of trillion, lakh crores, never go by that lakh crore word, because it will always confuse you. Make your life easy. Now, so we will talk about these budget allocations, some of these budget allocations that has happened. But again, what has happened is the government spending on this is a major area of stress. And that is why you see the government has realized this stress, and the government has again re-provisioned the funding of NREGA. Why will you fund more in NREGA when you see that there is some stress? Understand that. Remember that thing that I told you. People will go for NREGA only under duress. If there is no duress, people will not opt for NREGA, because NREGA pays the minimum wage only for a limited period. More number of people asking for NREGA work actually makes the economy, it shows the vulnerability in the rural economy. All right. Is this point clear? Then, and we'll see that and we'll see the number that you need to quote. Whenever you're saying schemes like NREGA, you should know that in what context are we going to speak. It is the number of work days demanded. So we'll talk about these 260, I think lakh crore or something like that work days. I'm unsure of the number, but it's 260. So how many number of people days have been demanded? So for example, I go for an NREGA, that is 1% day demand of work. So how many percent day demand of work was generated in the economy? The higher that limit is, that shows the economy is in the trouble. And you will see that this ratio, this figure is rising in a year and then falling and then rising. Can you give me the reason? Understood the question? Let me repeat my question. If in a year you will see the graph of NREGA, it will be rising at some point, it will fall another time, and then it will rise again. Now think logically, why would in rural areas in some month more work demanded, and in some months lesser work will be demanded? No, not productivity. No, not it's on. Seasonal nature of agriculture. That during the harvest and sowing, it will go down because the farmer will be interested in sowing his own field. And that's the case with sowing as well as harvesting. But during the interim period, during this hiatus that is created, that period in between, the demand will increase. So you again something that you should be aware of, because these figures are also there in the key features of the budget. So we'll talk about this stress that the farmers are facing. Then debt and deficit. Debt and deficit, there are a number of articles that you will read in today's newspaper which talk about that, yes, we have done extremely well in terms of containing our fiscal deficit. Remember that figure that I told you, that our deficit has reduced. We are trying to reduce our deficit to 5.1% of GDP. Which GDP is it? Nominal GDP. All these figures, all these numbers you should remember. GDP what? It's always nominal GDP. So what has happened is that we are reducing our borrowings. But to reduce our borrowings, what do we? There are only two things that you can do. Think on your feet. If you have to reduce your borrowings at home, what are the two things that you need to do? Decrease expenditure, increase your income sources. The government has been able to increase our income source because of something called as tax buoyancy. And what we will also read is that the government is treating, and I don't want you to write this in your exam, but you should understand this. The government is treating RBI as a milching cow. You understand the context? Why is it a milching cow for the government? Not printing money. That's absolutely wrong. You'll get into trouble with that. Dividend. RBI's profit is dividend. You can't monetize your debt in India. Remember this concept. That was called as monetization of debt that halted after 1997. So what is happening is RBI, Government of India is treating RBI as to be a cow. It earns profit and it takes away that profit because it is a department of, because it comes under Government of India, it takes away a lot of this profit. And this time it was a huge amount. And a number of RBI governors, you will see in the next 2-3 days, will be former governors, not this governor. The former governors will point out on this. Raghuram Rajan would do that. In fact, this guy Urjit Patel had resigned because of this issue. So there is a statement in Subhash Garg's book. The former finance secretary, he's written a book and he says that Narendra Modi ji, in a meeting of RBI and other people, directly called Urjit Patel as a snake sitting on the treasure of Government of India. So imagine you have such an independent body and the Prime Minister saying that. So this shows the philosophy of the Government of India, and there has always been a conflict between the North Bloc and the Mint Road. Understand this concept? Why am I saying North Bloc? Not Prime Minister's office. No. North Bloc, folks, North Bloc. No. Finance Ministry. You should know Delhi, folks. What is South Bloc? MEA. Always remember, you'll read these articles and you'll understand whenever the government says South Bloc, it means thinking of the MEA. And whenever it says North Bloc, it says the Ministry of Finance. And then when I say Mint Road, what is Mint Road? Where is Mint Road of Bombay, where you have RBIs? So there has always been a conflict there. If the RBI governor and the finance minister are friends, think that there's something problematic in the economy. There's something that they're cooking up. They should not have an amicable relationship. That's the best economy. And you will see it in the history of India. That you had P. Chidambaram, and then you had the other side you had D. Subbarao, both fighting with each other on newspapers in this thing. Why? Because this shows the independence of yes.
If the government doesn't take the dividends of RBI.
No, I'm not arguing that don't take the dividend. There is a Bimal Janan committee that I want you to read on, which says that sufficient resources should be kept with RBI so that it can meet its unforeseen expenditures. So think of it as a capital adequacy norm that RBI has kept for itself. So if you don't know what capital adequacy is, basically every bank in India has to keep some amount of money safe with itself so that it doesn't fall off. It doesn't have bank runs. I'm very simplifying it for you, but actually it is it's much more technical in nature. But in very colloquial sense or a very local sense, you can understand that I should have sufficient funds so that if someone comes and asks me for his deposits, I should have sufficient amount of money. I should be able to see my credit risk, my operational risk. But in general, this is a Bimal Jalan committee which talks about how much money can be given. And those rules have been bent from the time that Urjit Patel has resigned from that particular post. Now, and another concern that is there is that now that we have been reading this, and you must be reading this in the next 2-3 days, that while the fiscal deficit has reduced, the debt to GDP ratio of India is still very high. Now, there are only 2 ways to reduce debt to GDP ratio. Can you, again, thinking on your feet, what would be the 2 ways in which you can reduce your debt to GDP ratio? Only 2 ways. See, either reduce your debt, it's a ratio. How will you reduce it? Either reduce your debt or you start increasing your GDP. Only in these 2 ways can debt to GDP ratio be reduced. This was a major point of contention even last year and this year. And the Honorable Finance Secretary Somanathan, T.R. Somanathan, or I'm forgetting his full name, has always defended this and said that, see, as long as we are growing fast, the debt to GDP ratio will automatically take care of it. Are you able to understand this? That as long as the GDP is growing, the denominator is growing sufficiently more than the numerator, the growth will take care of the borrowings. Yes, that is true. But at the same point of time, the ideal level that it was envisaged for India was a debt to GDP ratio of 60%. Which were to be further divided into 40 plus 20, 40 for the central government and 20 for the state governments. So this was what was originally envisaged. We were in line to achieve that before COVID. We were at somewhere around 67, 68, but now we have shooted to 82. In fact, it was plus 90 last to last year, because the base was very poor. Remember, this is a ratio. Because the base was very poor during COVID, the debt to GDP ratio shot up to 90 or 91%. So this is what the argument that when you'll read it, this argument you should be aware of. The other thing is why debt to GDP ratio is also important is because a number of foreign players, when you see investment in India. So for example, if I have to invest in a student, like I told you about my D3 batch that runs in the morning. Now, when I have to, I know for a fact that some students have an innate ability that they will definitely crack, or they have the potential to crack it. Now, how can you check that innate ability? If I have to check, I'm randomly seeing all of you. If I have to check and I have to invest on you, and I have to bet on you. Think of betting on you. I have to keep my money on you that this person has a much more higher probability to crack the exam as compared to someone else. What parameters will I see? I don't have the access to tests. Regularity is one. Discipline is another. Because if you're disciplined in one aspect of your life, you can't just be disciplined in one aspect of your life and the other aspect is gone. If you're disciplined in waking up, and if you're disciplined in exercising or keeping good health of yourself, maybe gymming or whatever you want to do, wouldn't that also reflect on your discipline of academics as well? So what I say is academic health is also a combination of your mental health and your physical health. I've created this equation and I've seen my own journey through this, and I know that how mental health and academic health, mental health and your physical discipline helps your academic health. But at the same point of time, now think of you as investors in India as a country. How will you see that India is a good country to bank upon? Just like I was seeing you as good aspirants to bank upon, how will you see me as Indian? You are investors. How will you bank on me? Debt to GDP ratio is one. How disciplined am I? Isn't it telling you about the discipline? If I have to see a household that household is not disciplined, that means they don't have the income there, but still they are having a Mercedes in their house because they have to show it to the society. So that shows that person is not disciplined enough. You do not, and that's why investors see in Shark Tank, how much of money have you spent on advertising? How many organic people are you getting and how many inorganic people are you getting? Or apart from debt to GDP, how will you invest in me? Inflation is one. NPAs, how is my banking sector doing? This is key strength. How are my companies doing? What is the unemployment rate? What is the current account deficit? So these are all markers of my financial stability. Based on my financial stability, as an investor, you would like to invest in me. And that is what India, why am I telling you all of this story? Is because these numbers will decide whether India is eligible to become a part of bond indices. There are a number of bond indices in which bonds of different countries are taken. So for example, I am a huge hedge fund. Think of me as a person who is collecting money not from people, but from billionaires. Mark Zuckerberg comes to me and says, keep this $10 billion, invest in the maximum return. Sundar Pichai comes to me and says, keep this $5 billion, invest for me. These are called as hedge funds. People, managers which are managing not the funds of people like us, but of high net worth individuals. And no, more than mutual funds, because they have selected clientage. Mutual funds is for us, but mutual funds will give you an interest rate, maximum interest rate of 15-17%. That is the return. A hedge fund is supposed to give you a 50% return. And that's why it only caters to the super rich, usually. So for example, there is a company, D.E. Shaw, if you have heard this name, it's a company in Hyderabad. It's a hedge fund. So what these companies do is they invest in certain kind of bond indices. Just like you can also invest, instead of a stock, you can also invest in the entire Sensex, the overall number of the Sensex. You can also invest in that. Similarly, instead of investing in a particular stock of a particular country, you can invest on the overall Indian bond market. Now, if these numbers are good, if your financial stability is good, and because of that, India is now part of a cup, or at least one good world bond indices. What will it do? What it will do is India will get more money from foreign investors. India will get more money from this hedge fund. Instead of chasing these small players, a big player with billions of dollars with itself will directly invest in you. So that is the benefit if your fiscal health, if your financials are very strong. Therefore, these numbers are extremely important. And one of the most important number that I told you was interest payments. That shows how much is your committed expenditure. That again, you can't reduce in short run. So we were talking about this. You might have read today that we are on our way to this 4.5 target. You might see this in today's newspaper. Then CapEx, there's already been a lot of talk about CapEx. We have increased this from 10 trillion rupees to 11 trillion rupees this time. But again, even last year, we were not able to achieve that 10 trillion, by the way. If you see the revised estimates, it's not 10 trillion. So how did the government achieve? Now, if my question to you is, the government has a target of how much last year? What was the budget estimate for fiscal deficit last year? 5.9% for this year. 2023-24, it was 5.9, but the revised estimate is 5.8. How was it able to achieve 5.8? Despite the fact that it is a percentage of GDP, the percentage of GDP from what you had imagined earlier is lower now as compared to what you had planned. What I'm trying to say is last year you thought that you will grow by 11%, but you're only growing by 9.5% nominal terms. So your denominator is low, but still you have been able to borrow less. How is that possible? Disinvestment is a major problem. It's not disinvestment. In fact, I'll tell you something about fiscal marksmanship, which is where government is extremely poor. I'll tell you about this. Disinvestment, we had targeted something around, I think something around 60,000 crores. We are only 3,000 or 5,000 crore rupees, or I think 12,000 crore rupees.
From capital expenditure, it put that.
Exactly. So remember, you have to borrow less. The only way to borrow less as a percent of GDP, which is already falling, is that you reduce your expenditure and you increase your income. Now, remember that tax and non-tax. In terms of taxes, what the government did was its tax buoyancy was good. So their revenue was increased. It milked RBI. Now understand that RBI debate. So we have talked about the RBI dividend debate. You can watch the video later on. So what it has done, it has taken a lot of money from the RBI in terms of dividend to compensate for the fall in non-tax revenue from disinvestment. Disinvestment, and this has been a trend in government of India. Disinvestment, every year you say we'll get 50,000 crore, 60,000 crore, you end up doing only 10,000 crore rupees. So that shows poor fiscal marksmanship. So there's a word called fiscal marksmanship in our connotation. What that means is, have you seen that this game called archery? Have you seen that archery? You try to hit a circle. So that is, if you are poor at that, your arrow is going in wayward direction. That means you are planned for something and action is something else. So if you're not able to achieve your aim, that shows poor marksmanship. And if it's good in finance, then it shows good fiscal marksmanship. So we have been poor in terms of our disinvestment, fiscal marksmanship. So now you're able to understand the revenue side. How were we able to generate more revenue? But on the expenditure side, our revenue expenditure actually increased because NREGA, we had planned to spend only 60,000 crore rupees. We ended up spending 86,000 crore rupees, which shows what? Now you can answer. Which shows what? Rural stress was already existing in the market. Therefore, they had to spend more. All right. Now, the other thing, so their expenditure is high. What should they do? What they have done is that they have taken off some amount of money from capital expenditure. Instead of spending the entire 10 lakh crore rupees, they are planning to spend only 9.5 lakh crores, save that 50,000 crore rupees for all the stuff that you have not been able to do. And that's why the revised, this thing is lesser than what was provision. Provisioning was 5.9% fiscal deficit, but what you're planning to achieve is 5.8. But again, these numbers might change again when you'll see the budget of July. When the full budget comes, don't be surprised if these numbers do not match. All right. Then, so these are things that you should know. Then we were talking about inflation and purchasing power and the geopolitical risk. Now, this is what we had talked about. We had talked about all of this. Then let's, this is what we have done. And we had talked about this. Now, these numbers you should definitely remember now. All these numbers, 26 trillion, 5 trillion, and 17 trillion. At least remember these 17 trillion. So in all of this, all you need to remember is one is 17 trillion and the total is 48 trillion. Rest you can figure out, even if, I mean, 2 or 3 trillion here or there will not matter. The other thing that you should definitely remember is this side. The committed and non-committed and expenditure. So if you know the capex and you know already that this is going to be 48, that means that has to be 37. So these numbers may become very logical after a point of time. Now, after this, let me go to certain numbers. Give me a second, folks. Yes. Now, I'm going to talk about certain things. Now, the first thing is the theme of the budget. The theme of the budget was a Viksit Bharat a budget for Viksit Bharat. Now you should understand the connotation of Viksit Bharat first of all. That what do you think is what do you think? How do you define a country that it is a developed country or a developing country? What is the parameter? It's per capita income. Today I've been taking interviews for the last 8 hours, and I think only 2 candidates out of I think 12, 13 that I've taken interview were able to answer this. That it is per capita income. For a middle income group country, how do you define these countries? Developed and developing countries. If it's a middle income group country, is a country where the per capita income is between $2,000 per capita to 10,000 or at times 8,000. It's actually 10,000 at times. Some say it is to be 12,000, but in that range, if you are there, then you are a middle income group country. India right now, it's somewhere around 2,500. It's in the lower end of the middle income group country. And after that, you take a quantum jump and you get into that high end of this. So what we are, when you say that India plans to become a Viksit Bharat, what you are intending to say is that you are trying to raise the per capita income of the country to a higher orbit. Despite that, if you see how the government describes a developed country, is that it has not taken that as a target. What target has Government of India taken? What is the target of Government of India for 2047? No. It's a number. 10 trillion. It's way off. How many trillions are we right now? In terms of lakh crore or in terms of rupees trillion? 296. Remember that figure that I told you? That 296, 297 right now, 327 next year. This is our trillion rupee economy. No. You're close. But what we are planning to do is by 2027, we want to become a $5 trillion economy. By 2030, we want to become a $7 trillion economy. And don't be surprised if these goalposts keep changing. Okay. जैसे फार्मर्स इनकम 2022 तक जब होना था डबल, तो कई चीजें जुमला होती हैं, बट ये अचीव कर लेंगे. 5 trillion you will definitely be able to achieve by 2027. 7 trillion perhaps, yes, you can achieve, but by 2047 your aim is $30 trillion economy. This is your aim. So government has not defined it in terms of per capita, which it ideally should, but it has defined in terms of the overall GDP, nominal GDP number. Now, then let's go into the other theme of the budget, that it gets into people-centric digital public infrastructure. There is another thing that is there in news, which the government is going to launch, is what is called as a sovereign AI. It was not there in the budget. It was not there because it's a major again, I think it's because it's a major scheme. The government is shy of that, but it has already announced its intent on sovereign AI. Now, what we are trying to do is, just like we have created our DPIs. What is DPIs? Digital public infrastructure. Can you give an example of a DPI? Aadhaar. Aadhaar is a part of a DPI. Aadhaar enables something. So something like Aadhaar enabled payments platform would be a DPI. Then India Stack is the entire thing. PM Money was what for what? I'm forgetting. Yes, PM Money. Yes. PM Money, but it's not taken off that well. It's still struggling. Bheem, best example. That UPI, that you can do all of this. In this year's budget, another example of this is use of CoWIN app. What we have talked about is, till now, CoWIN was being used only for the COVID thing. But government has realized we have already built in everything. Why not add Indradhanush to it? Imagine now on a scan of QR code, you can get the entire structure of you, that how many vaccines have you got, what is the, so you're integrating everything under one platform. And that is the digital public infrastructure. Just like you have physical infrastructure, government is building its public infrastructure on OpenStack, on India Stack. This is one of world's best example. And what India is trying to emulate. So A, you should read Indradhanush. B, you should also read that we are adding HPVs. What is HPV? HPV vaccine, folks? No, what is the full form of HPVs?
Human papilloma virus.
Human papilloma virus. It's a major problem for females, and it has to be inoculated at the between the best time or the golden time to be inoculated is the age group of 9 to 14. Okay. So you should know the details of HPV, also why it should be given at an early stage. Now it is now been inducted with, we are trying to induct it in Indradhanush. That means what all are the other vaccines in Indradhanush? Then what are the two kinds of virus? It's not all HPVs. It's two major kinds of HPV which trouble women. It's the second most largest reason for women deaths in cancer after breast cancer. These are all things. And then India has developed an indigenous vaccine by Serum Institute of India for HPV. All of this is linked now. Now, this is the background with which you should study the budget. So even if it's a question on HPV, the reason that it has been asked is that because Indradhanush is now, so you can say this is a science and tech question, but it became a science and tech question because it was a budget current affairs question. That linkage you should be able to understand. And then an in-depth analysis on this. And all you need to do, folks, another thing that people don't tell you, you don't need a teacher. All you need is good prompting on ChatGPT. You should be a good prompt engineer. You don't need a teacher. And within 5-7 years, I can assure you there will be enough technology that I can be replaced. My human interaction might not be able to be replaced, but in all other sense, I can have, you already have deep fakes. You can easily create, I'm forgetting that website. I mentioned in my D3 class, what was that website called? For videos. Oh, I'll send you the name. This wonderful website. I've gone on its browser as well. What it does is for 30 seconds you can create any video. I'll not encourage you to do it, but what you can do is go back home, take up the Prime Minister's video, record it on your system, then go to this website. It allows you for 30-second free clip. Then take a script, give it to that system, and ask it to say anything. You have created a deep fake of the Honorable Prime Minister. Now it's up to you. The kind of deep fake that you create might land you in jail because it can be backtracked. But at the same point of time, what I'm trying to tell you that you can do anything with AI. And the most powerful teacher right now is this. And I have been constantly using AI, this thing for the last one year. And it helps me so much in terms of gaining knowledge. The moment that I see a DAF and I know something is there, for example, people at times write fake stuff in their DAFs to impress people, to impress the other people. Now, there was a candidate that I was interviewing, and he had written two times he had written chess. ChatGPT se पूछते हैं chess के बारे में. So I found out everything about chess in 2-3 minutes. How does one become a grandmaster? Who are the major chess players? What are the famous chess moves? I knew, I mean, it's instead of Googling it, I had given it to GPT and I wanted what I wanted to know. And I grilled the person. I knew that it has written that without knowing enough about chess. That is how you should be smart about. You give any mains question you want to pick up, just give it to the ChatGPT and it will give you the best of answers. So why do you need a teacher? You don't need a teacher if you have GPT. And GPT, even if you have a paid version, it only costs you 2,000 rupees a month. 5 of you can share it. They say it runs on an email ID. Just share one email ID and 5 of you can simultaneously share it. The GPT-4 version. So it's so efficient for you to prepare different topics. So please use GPT, but be careful because it is still being trained. And at times it will take you to a fantasy world. I'll give you an example. Since I have a law background, I recently, it was quoted in the newspaper that there was a lawyer who used ChatGPT for his arguments, and he was completely relying on this without seeing that whether the precedent actually exists or not. What smartly ChatGPT did, it created a story, it created a fictional case which does not even exist in real world. That is the problem. So be very careful. These models are still being trained. Take them as a guide, good guide, and then and improvise on it. But 70-80% of your work will be done there. And even if you don't understand, for example, I was teaching a current affairs class some time back, and there was a news on green hydrogen. I have no idea about green hydrogen. I had no idea about green hydrogen. But because it was in news and the newspapers were not able to elaborate on it, I just asked GPT to basically simplify it for me as easy as possible. And now, till the end of my life, I will remember what green hydrogen is, what gray hydrogen is, what blue hydrogen is. That is the intensity with which you can prepare. So pick up stuff, use ChatGPT, just correlate it with the web as well, and then prepare your own notes. This is how your prep should be. If you're not using GPT, you are already 2 steps behind a smart candidate. Remember this. So because the smartest of ones would be using it. And your competition is with a lot of smart engineers. 80% of what we see there in interviews are engineers. And 80% of people who get selected are engineers. So they know how to study 1 semester of work in 1 night. This is what engineering teaches you. And that is how smart you should be. That is why they are successful. They know where to stop and how to make more time. Despite the fact that a humanities student is much more hardworking. So, and apart from the fact that there is a bias in the CSAT paper, which helps the engineers much more than a humanities student. But what I'm trying to tell you is that do your own research on different topics. DPI's sovereign AI. What is sovereign AI? What are the key features of sovereign AI? It might not be there on GPT because it has limited knowledge up to a particular cutoff date. You should also know this. So do your research on sovereign AI. What is it? What is the computing power in under AI? There's something called GPUs, graphics processor unit. And there is a company called NVIDIA, which has become a huge company. It is now competing with the likes of Apple. It has reached a market capitalization of $1 trillion. It was a gaming company, by the way. It used to create chips for games. GPU was used in the gaming industry. But we found out that this can also be used for AI training models. So therefore, what is a GPU? How many GPUs are we investing in? Sovereign AI will be based on from 10,000 GPU to 30,000 GPU. And what the government is planning to offer you is compute as a service. You should know what compute as a service is. So just like right now, we are using, how can I tell you? When you host your website, let me give you an even simpler example. So let's take the example that when we have our own websites, or when we have our own emails, that email is on the web server of Google, right? Google is handling all of that. So we are taking the mail as a service from them. Similarly, what the government of India is trying to do, there is something called as Google Colab. Has anyone seen Google Colab? No. So it comes in machine learning. Instead of running your own systems, instead of running algorithms on your own systems, you can run algorithm on Google's GPUs. So what I'm trying to tell you is, a lot of startups, what they want is insights from data. They want a lot of insights. You give them big data, you give them lots of data points, and they want insights out of that. How should I take my decision? Should I do this? Should I do that? For that, you need very heavy computing power. But this computing power is extremely expensive. You have to buy really high systems, very expensive systems with high powered GPUs to do that. Instead, what the government is doing, government is saying, I will give you that power online. You log into my system, you submit your data, anonymize your data, and then you can find your own insights. This is what the government is doing. Government is going to help startups that you can give your data, you can keep your data secure as well, and you can run all your algorithms on the government provided data, on the government GPU power, and then find out insights. So it is going to help these startups, these new companies, because machine learning, AI, deep learning is all about these basically these heavy computing machines, which not everyone can afford. So maybe in the end of the class, I can show you a couple of scripts of this thing, Google Colab. Now, then you have in this proactive inflation management. That's all right. Another thing that you should note is the GCF ratio, which is called as gross capital formation. We'll see it in another couple of minutes. But you should be aware of what is this what is this ratio called as gross capital formation. Let me just write it down. Yeah, gross capital formation. This is the other term for investment as well. Whether you call it investment or you call it GCF, it's almost the same thing. Now, what you need to understand from economics is that the country tries to increase the investment in the country. Why? It wants investment. By the way, investment can come from three sources. This should be a part of your normal GS class, but you should know this. Investment can come from households, investment can come from corporates, investment can come from government. Right now, what is happening in India, this investment that is there is coming from the government side. It is not so much coming from the corporate side, but the households are also investing, but the households also are investing more in real estate. Okay, where the productiveness of the investment is not that huge. But apart from that, they're also investing in the stock market as well. We are seeing a lot of financial savings as well. So, but at the same point of time, one problem is that the investment is not coming from the corporate sector. It is coming from this. But why is investment so important? Because it is the investment which will lead to a GDP growth rate. Let me give you this link. Let me draw this link for you. Now, there is something called as savings. These savings go to these financial intermediaries. From these financial intermediaries, this become investment, and from investment, it becomes GDP. I'm going to explain you why this particular flow is important. Now, what happens in an economy is that it is typically the households which save a lot. So ideally, savings can come from all these three sources. Savings can come from government as well. Savings can come from corporate as well. And savings can come from household, but households are the predominant ones here. So savings are increasing. And what happens is that this savings, especially the urban households, are saving a lot. And they are putting their money in this financial institution. Now, financial institution doesn't only mean banks. It also means mutual funds. It also means stocks, bonds, anything which is financial in nature. They are putting their savings in these financial institutions. Now, what happens is that that basically investment happens. These financial institutions lend to either the government, market borrowing. Remember that market borrowings? Even the SLR is form of a borrowing of Government of India. So whether it's SLR, it's market borrowings, or private sector borrowing from the banks and financial institution or NBFCs. So all these entities borrow from financial institutions and then invest. But the critical link here is what is called as ICOR. What happens is that why as an entrepreneur, why do I invest? I invest so that my goods and services are put up in sale. I invest in my business because I want my goods I want to produce goods and services to be sold. This is why I invest. Everyone invests to sell something which has become part of GDP. But that ratio of investment converting into GDP is through a ratio called as incremental capital output ratio. What this talks about is that it is as the word says, incremental capital output. It is change in capital upon change in output, which means if I have to produce one more output, suppose I have a shoe factory. If I have to produce one more shoe, how much investment do I need to get? Now tell me if this ratio is non-economic student folks. If this ratio is small, is it better, or if it's large, is it better?
Small. Small is better.
Because it shows efficiency. It shows efficiency. Think of two aspirants. One aspirant is reading one page, one newspaper in 2 hours. The other aspirant is reading it in 40 minutes. Who is efficient? The one in 40 minutes. This is nothing but efficiency of capital. And you can't change it in short run. This will only take time to decrease. For India, the ICOR is 4. India's ICOR is 4. Now, if I tell you India's ICOR is 4 and India's investment rate is 30% of its GDP, can you tell me India's growth rate? Think of it again. India's investment rate is 30%. India's ICOR is 4. How much of GDP are you going to produce? Think of it. See, what I'm trying to tell you is, see this again. Can I say change in output is also equal to change in GDP? Can I say change in output is equal to nothing but what is GDP? The value of goods and services produced in a year in an economy. Isn't it change in output? No. 7.5. I am saying I want to find this. What is the change in growth rate? I have already given you the change in capital is nothing but change in investment. This is 36. Oh, sorry, 30%. And I am saying ICOR is equal to 4. All you need to do is get this here, get this here. 30 divided by 4 is 7.5. This is the growth rate that you will get. It will give you an approximate number of growth rate. When you see this year's investment rate, it is somewhere around 29 point something percentage GCF, and India's ICOR is around 4.2. It translates into roughly 7% growth rate, which is exactly what the government of India has said. Can you now understand this entire mechanics of growth? This is how the mechanics of growth. This is usually my first slide in my economy class, because you need to understand where is the growth coming from. The mechanics, the typical mechanic of growth, that how investment is very important. And if you have to invest, that means savings are also very important. Because if you don't have sufficient savings, but you have to invest, what should happen? What will happen? Suppose now I'm giving, understood this ICOR? Anyone who's not understood ICOR? Pakka, and everyone? ICOR samajh mein aaya? Sabko? Now suppose I'll give you a hypothetical situation. It's not actually a hypothetical situation. It has happened in case of India as well already. Suppose you are investing a lot, but you do not have sufficient money savings. How will you do that? Borrowings. Gap between investment and savings is also a reflection on government borrowings. How much is government borrowing? How much is private is borrowing? And not just government borrowing. Everyone. How much is government borrowing? How much is private borrowing? How much is household borrowing? Household indebtedness is also reflected in this. If there's a difference between them, this shows the borrowings. And if it's not filled domestically, it can also show you that the government is borrowing from outside. So this equation actually gives you an insight into twin deficits. One, the fiscal deficit, and the other is the current account deficit. It gives you a macroeconomic picture of the health of the economy, because this itself is going to tell you how much is the government going to borrow from inside, which is fiscal deficit, and how much is the government going to borrow from outside, which is current account deficit. Yes.
What is the role of demand, both domestic and global?
The
Role of demand. The demand also affects output.
So demand will come from here. If there is no demand, there will be no investment. If there is demand in the economy, that's why you would like to invest. If you have enough, if you want to invest more, but you don't have enough savings, there are only two ways to do that. Either you will borrow from in your own house, or you will borrow from others' house. If you are borrowing from your own house, it's fiscal deficit. If it's you are borrowing from some other's house, it is basically your growth is being financed by some other country. You can say that this is also seen through current account deficit. I have simplified you a basic macroeconomic. There is something called leakages is equal to investment in macroeconomics. This is one of the basic stuff. But you should know this even if you don't have GS, even if you don't have economics optional. This is very fundamental stuff for you to understand. Savings is equal to, or leakages is equal to injections. And once you understand that, you will understand that everything is linked. Your fiscal deficit is also linked to your current account deficit, is also linked to your GDP growth rate. So these three numbers are correlated. Understood? But did you understand this? This thing you should be able to understand, even if you don't know the identity in macroeconomics. This you are able to understand? Great. Now, so these things were mentioned in this year's budget. Then apart from that, let's move out into new areas. Another area that you should definitely focus on for this year's prelims and mains this year, maybe next year prelims as well. The government has actually stopped thinking of poverty in terms of calorie numbers. There used to be a report called as Tendulkar Committee report, which gave us the last poverty figures. After that, there was a C. Rangarajan committee who gave the poverty figures, but was not accepted by the government of India because it increased the poverty, the absolute number of poor people. So the government has taken a new approach where the Niti Aayog has come up with this index called as National Multidimensional Poverty Index. They have missed out the word national. They have written the word multidimensional poverty index to confuse you, because the multidimensional poverty index is given by, I think, Oxford or UNDP. I think Oxfam. It's given by Oxfam. Now there is a difference between these two data points. Why there is a difference? Because the way Oxfam does it, you should know what multidimensional poverty index is. The Oxfam takes 10 indicators under 3 classes. The Indian version, which is the national one, takes 12 indicators. There are 2 extra indicators that you should be aware about. And because of these extra 2 indicators, which is A, maternal health, and B, number of bank accounts that you have. So because we have been able to do well on these 2 indicators, we have accepted it, we have included them. And we have said that the number of poor that we have right now is around 11% of our population. This translates into 11%, and in 2006 or 2005, it was 55%. So from 55% multidimensional poor, we have come to 11% multidimensional poor according to Niti Aayog. You should know all these 12 indicators, folks. This is extremely important. But you should also know a criticism of this, that typically in India, poverty is seen through your ability of your income. Whether you have to see whether your income at the baseline is increasing or not, which is seen in India through consumption. And we have not been doing these consumption surveys. Consumption survey used to be the best way to see that how poverty can be calculated. You have taken up an index and you are calculating, which might underestimate the number of poor in India. So that needs to be done. So if you're writing an answer, or if you are giving an answer even in your interview, you should make this caveat that shows that you are a thinking individual. You have been proactive. You have not read just Vision IAS, MDI. You have applied your brain to it. So this is one thing that you should know. PM Swanidhi, inside out, you should know that why was it started during COVID? Who are the targeted persons under this? How much loan is given under this? Is it a collateralized loan? It is a not collateralized loan. Is it a centrally sponsored scheme, or is it a central sector scheme? All of these details, do a good post analysis of PM Swanidhi. Then, and if you want to create, best thing is, if you want to check whether you know enough on this, Just ask ChatGPT to create a tough MCQ on PM Swanidhi. You'll get a reflection of yourself. Ask ChatGPT to create a question. You don't need a test series. You don't need a test series. ChatGPT is enough for you. You ask it to create 10 questions on polity and make them extremely tough. Write it to ChatGPT. See, you'll not be able to do a lot of questions. It has been trained on everything. And what you can do right now, I'll show you my GPT. Hold on. Where is my GPT? You can customize your GPTs, folks. See, I have my own GPT, Polity Pro. What I have done in the Polity Pro is, let me edit GPT. Let me show it to you. Configure. See, what I have done is I have created a specific GPT for myself. Okay, by the way, you can sell your GPTs as well, customized GPTs. So what is the most sold GPT? Any idea? AI girlfriend. This is just like you have a store for Apple Store. You have App Store, you have this Play Store, you have a GPT store. And this is going to be the future. You want a customized girlfriend or you want a customized boyfriend. You can get that experience. And this is just the starting. It can read about you. The more you interact, the GPT will create the perfect wife for you, the perfect girlfriend, the perfect boyfriend for you. And you can interact and you'll be very happy. So you can customize a lot of stuff. What I have customized, I mean, me being me, I was able to come up with a polity customization of everything. So you clearly know my priorities in life. Now, what I've done is I have given it Lakshmikant, the entire, you can easily do some kind of plagiarism. You can get all these books now free of cost. I've given this GPT Lakshmikant's book. Now, what I'll do is I will give it ARCs as well. Anything that I will get my hands on. You get any coaching's material, you give it to just the GPT. And then ask it to create 100 questions on polity. It would read the entire text and give you questions. This is how sophisticated you can do. You can do it for polity, you can do it for geography, you can do it for economy. Customized teachers for specific subjects which know much more than an average teacher. And then give it the PYQs of UPSC. Give it everything. See, it has become world's best teacher of polity within 10 minutes. This is what I say is a smart aspirant. You can't compete with these aspirants now. So, understood what I'm trying to say? Now, all you need to do is, I just need to give it any kind of decision, explain fundamental rights to me. Searching my knowledge base. So, it will not search on random stuff. GPTs are trained on random stuff. This personalized GPT is only trained on the stuff that I have given it. So it's much more directed in that matter. Internet is running. Yeah. And that's why you should replace, by the way, you should ideally replace all your search engines with Bing. Why am I saying Bing? Why Bing? I'm not asking you not to use Google Chrome now. I'm asking you to use Bing. Why Bing? Because Microsoft has invested in OpenAI and it has integrated ChatGPT in its search engine. So therefore, it has now become the best search engine in the world. So you need to be aware. You need to be a smart aspirant. Gissu aspirant se upar nikal lao. ठीक है? बार्ड इतना झूठ बोला है गूगल ने, जेमिनाई ने. उसने बार्ड का अपग्रेड वर्जन जेमिनाई निकाला है. एंड मैंने जेमिनाई यूज किया है. इतना झूठ बोला है जेमिनाई के बारे में उन्होंने कि हम उससे बेटर हैं. जरा एक बार जेमिनाई यूज करना और एक बार चैट जीपीटी प्रो यूज कर लेना. जमीन आसमान का फर्क. बार्ड इज ऑल्सो ओकेश, बट जेमिनाई इज रियली बैड. इट हैज नॉट लिव्ड अप टू इट्स एक्सपेक्टेशन एट ऑल. और उन्होंने क्या बोला है? दैट यू सी द एड ऑफ जेमिनाई. it will say that real time में you are giving it command और वो बनाया जा रहा है, और end में छोटा सा note लिखा हुआ है that it has, this video has been pre-recorded. So there is a huge time lag between these two, and they combined it together to look like they have just do it on a live version. That is not true. So this is the, I mean these corporates lie left, right, and center. So this, see this, everything given in a paragraph. You give it a mains question, it will answer for you on this context. So that is how you become smart candidates. All right. And for each particular topic, irrespective what your optional is, you can do this. Give it the books for specific areas. Philosophy as an optional, although I'm getting into the domain of Mitra Sir, but you can give all your Aristotle and all these books to GPT and ask it to create questions and write answers for you. And you can compare your answer with what the GPT has written. You don't even need an evaluator now. Chalo. So PM Swanidhi is the other thing that you can do. And by the way, I've tried this I tried this one thing with Shubhra ma'am, that I was meeting her, and there was this question that came up, and I just GPT'd it and I showed it to ma'am. Ma'am, arre, 1 minute mein itna badhiya, 30 seconds mein itna badhiya answer. So see, even the best of them will be very surprised that despite so many years of experience, a GPT is good enough to replace them. So that's why I'm saying be a smart candidate. And you can, by the way, if you're smart enough, you can integrate your GPT to Google Docs. And whatever you are doing here can directly get into your notes of Google Docs. This is another step that you can take. You do your search here and ask it to keep sending this to your Google Doc for your notes to be compiled. So that you can also do. Now, then PM Shri, again, a scheme that was launched last year, but has taken a huge focus this year. What is this scheme? It's a centrally sponsored schemes about schools, school infrastructure. Which kinds of schools? That could be a PT question. Does it have Navodayas or this Johar Yojanas, then Johar Vidyalayas? Then what is the difference between these Navodayas and then the other the Jawaharlal Nehru ones? So all of this, once you pick up on one stuff, you should be curious enough to ask the other two questions as well. What is the difference? Your curiosity will help you a lot. And I still remember, and at times that curiosity, how does it help? I remember this question very well. In 2011 prelims, just before the prelims, I was reading some news on crude oil. What had happened in 2010, there was a deep horizon oil blast that happened in the Gulf of Mexico. And there was a lot of oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico. In fact, there's a wonderful movie called Deep Horizon on Netflix or on Amazon. So you can probably watch that. Now, what had happened was the oil was in news, and there was something on sweet oil and sour oil. I just searched it up. What is the sweet and sour oil? Just out of curiosity. I was not expecting anything. So I just searched that what is this sweet, and I realized that it is the amount of sulfur. If the amount of sulfur is high, then it's sour oil. And if the sulfur is low, it is sweet oil. And then I just Googled where do you get this sweet oil and where do you get this sour oil. And I was surprised in 2011 prelims, and you can go back and check. There was a question on this. So it's just about scratching the surface a little. Be that, at least have that initiation within yourself that I like to scratch the surface and know stuff. Once you have that curiosity, you'll be able to do well in the paper. So do that for PM Shri, do that for India Skill Mission. Is it a PPP program? What are the problems in the India Skill Mission? What is this Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana? And there are multiple versions of it, 1.0, 2.0 and 3.0. What is the difference between 1.0, 2.0 and 3.0? Again, something that you should know both for your mains and for your prelims. Then Mudra Yojana. What is the Mudra Yojana? Whom is it given to? What is the amount? There are 3 kinds of loans in Mudra Yojana. There is something called Tarun, Kishore and Shishu. You should know the difference between this. What kind of scheme is it? Is it a central scheme or the other scheme? And the best thing is, yes, you can GPT it, but I would also want you to go on the website of PM Mudra and do a little bit of research on that. Have this thing as well. And you can also give the entire website to the GPT and ask it to summarize it for you. If you don't want to even do that effort, give a web page to GPT and ask it, please give me notes out of this web page. You'll get that. So read about this. Then next is farmers welfare, PM Kisan. Who are the beneficiaries? Not everyone gets benefit out of it. What is the amount? 6,000 rupees. Who are the beneficiaries? What kind of scheme is it? Then PM Fasal Bima Yojana. There are three types. It's basically a crop insurance scheme. You should know how is the division of this crop insurance happen. It's not free of cost. The center pays some portion, the state government pays another portion, and the farmer also pays. And the farmer pays according to the season and according to the risk of the crop. For example, for Rabi crop, it's 1%. For Kharif crop, I think it's 1.5 or 2%. And for a horticulture crop, which is much more riskier, it's 5%. The premium that a farmer has to pay. So suppose I have a farm whose value is 100 rupees. Farm in sense, my value of produce is 100 rupees that I'm producing. I would have to ensure that 100 rupees worth of crops, I would have to pay 5 rupees from my pocket. The rest will come from the center and the state. And then you should also know the problems that the PM Fasal Bima Yojana is having and how we are overcoming it through surveillance, through drones. All of that analysis you should also have. Then ENAM, again, who is implementing? Just like PM Fasal Bima Yojana, who implements it? ENAM, what is ENAM? Why was it introduced? Who implements it? What kind of scripts are there in ENAM? All of that analysis you should be able to understand. Then Mudra, I told you. Then when it comes to female enrollment, the female, where is it? Yeah, this female labor force participation rate. There is this survey called as, and this is one bad thing that I have noticed about the economic survey. They are not quoting what is the source. This is absolutely wrong to give you graphs without sourcing, naming the sources. This is from the PLFS survey, the periodic labor force survey of 2020 to 23, which talks about that the female labor force participation rate has increased, basically saying that out of 100 women who are in the age group, what is labor force? First of all, understand what is labor force. If there are 100 women in the age group of 15 to 59, because that is what we understand as working age group in India. If there are 100 women in that age group, how many of them are working and, very important, willing to work? If you see that ratio, that is called as female labor force participation ratio. In 2017-18, it was 23%, which is poorer than Saudi Arabia. And now it's 37%, but you should also be able to critically answer this. This also shows rural distress, because the women are planning to work, or the women are willing to work or are working because they are forced to work. And what is the quality of their work? That the PLFS survey talks about, that it is usually informal, unorganized sector that they are getting involved in. Also Narega. Yeah. So this shows you stress in the economy again. This is the kind of analysis that mains requires. So that will only come if you're reading, at least if you're reading the newspapers, because this analysis was given in the newspapers. Then there was this article on Lakhpati Didis and drone Didis. So you should be aware of what is this Lakhpati Didis, drone Didis, and then what is the role of farmer producer organizations and what is the role of SHGs, self-help groups. So these are all related stuff that is mentioned here, but should be included. Then female enrollment in the higher education by 28%. You can probably take a note of it for your other mains aspect as well. Then the next theme, sustainable development. In sustainable development A, you should know, if you are appearing for this year, you should know COP28 inside out. The COP that we are planning to hold as host, which one is that? COP33. COP33 we are planning to, we have given our acceptance that we are planning to host it. So you should know what were the key discussions of COP28. What is transitioning out of fossil fuel versus phases out of fossil fuel. These are very technical terms. You should be able to understand these technical terms. Then, apart from that, what is coal gasification? What is liquefaction capacity? There's this thing called gasification and regasification when it comes to LNG. You should note what is this gasification and regasification. In LNG, what we do is we gasify LNG into liquid form, transport it, and then we reconvert it into liquid form and in gaseous form, and then transport it within the country. So you should know that process. What is this gasification and regasification, especially what is coal gasification? Then just like we have our ethanol blending program, you should know about this ethanol blending program in any case. We are also planning to start a mandatory CNG and PNG blending with biogas. So how do these blend? What is CNG and how is it different from PNG? The difference between these two plus the difference between LPG. These are three different gases. What is the difference between all of these without getting into the technicality of it? But at the same point of time, how you can blend this biogas with it. Then you also have this biomass aggregation machinery, the funding for that. Solar rooftops. The Prime Minister had recently launched the Pradhan Mantri Suryodaya Yojana. What is this Yojana? How is it different from National Solar Mission of 2014? Why did the National Solar Mission, which had a target of 100 gigawatts by 2022, out of which 40 was to come from solar rooftop, we were not able to achieve? What was the problem there? What is the implication of this? Because now you're not targeting electricity generation. You're targeting 1 crore households you are targeting. And how will you integrate into the main? So how will this integrate in the feeders lines? How will they integrate into the main line? The challenges for the power distribution company and the implications on the power distribution company. That kind of in-depth analysis you should be able to understand. So this is why am I asking you this? Because today there was a candidate who was able to answer this. So the person who was sitting next to me, Sanjay Srivastav sir, is a 1979 batch IAS who was apparently the coal secretary also. Now you can't play around with a coal secretary. Okay. So he immediately caught on him. Okay, beta. Tell me then what is this? What are you talking about? So remember that there will be a smarter person in that room. Don't try to fool yourself around by throwing words. So please read about this solar rooftop in detail. What is this Yojana? The sharing of this Yojana, because it's going to be a centrally sponsored scheme, and who is implementing it. Always remember, for each scheme, you should know the implementation agency as well. I think it's Department of Power here, the Ministry of Power under BE or someone. Just check who's doing it. Then also folks, you should have a fair idea about different ministries and the departments under these ministries, which in my time used to come under India Yearbook. In India Yearbook used to give it. I don't know whether it still gives it, but if it does, then please have a look at it. Otherwise, you can go to the websites of different Government of India, these things, and at least see the different departments that are there. If you want to have a summary of it, it is also given in the budget of IDV, because budget, the data is given by department wise and ministry wise. Then you have biomanufacturing foundry. What is biofoundry? You should know what biofoundry is. Then Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana. What is this Ujjwala Yojana? Who is it given to? How many cylinders are given? The subsidy was recently increased here. What is the amount of subsidy? All of this you should know. Freebie versus welfare program, a mains question that you might get, or an interview question that you might get. Then what are the failure points of Ujjwala Yojana? People are taking the gas, this LPG connection because they get only 2 free cylinders. After that, you need to buy a cylinder. But if you don't have money, where will you buy it from? That's a real problem on ground that I'm telling you. So you should be aware about this. And these are problems with especially students coming from urban area. So these are problems with D-school people, that in your DAF, it is reflected that you are urban centric. You don't have that rural kind of setting or rural kind of foothold. So this is this thing. Then what is this Ujala scheme? What is Ujala? People will say Ujala scheme is for LED, but what you will fail to realize is now it has been extended to fans as well. Who is implementing Ujala? What is the full form of Ujala? Then what is this street light national LED program or street light program, whatever the full form is? So who is implementing it? You should know this, and it is complementing the Ujala scheme because that is for your own homes. This is for your own homes. This is for the public parks and the infrastructure, and the other areas, social areas. The e-buses, maybe you can read about in terms of science and technology. Maybe you can read about the different kinds of e-vehicles. There are actually 4 kinds of e-vehicles. So you can probably read about that. And what are the difference between these 4 kinds of e-vehicles? Because I remember reading it in one of the explained pages in this thing. And what you can also do is, if you've been reading Indian Express, don't throw away your Indian Express. What you can also do is just compile them and keep them, so that just before the examination, couple of months before the examination, at least go through the explained page once of all the articles, of all the newspapers. And I can promise you will get at least 3 to 4 questions in your prelims. At least I'm telling you 3 to 4 questions. If you just see the explained page of one even, that is how important that page is. Maybe Indian Express should give me money to promote it. Now, PM Gati Shakti. Now, in terms of PM Gati Shakti, first you should note what these railway corridors are. And PM Gati Shakti is a mixture of 6 things. What constitutes PM Gati Shakti? There are 6. It's not just railways. It's airports as well. It's ports as well. It's metro transportation within a city as well. So whatever comes under defense, no, defense is not under PM Gati Shakti. Corridor might be there, but read about PM Gati Shakti. It was a major point in last year's budget, by the way, not this year's budget, but still you should know all the 6 areas of PM Gati Shakti and the major railway corridors that we have. Not just the railway corridors, the industrial corridors that we are building. Okay? And also we have something called as the Sagar Mala. So read about what is this Sagar Mala that we are having for our ports as well. So these things are all connected, folks. Maybe have a look at the ministry's website, the transportation ministry's website, and you will get all of this. Then Udan scheme. What is the working of Udan scheme? How much money is charged? What is the criteria of an Udan scheme to be applicable or not? So these things, then you can maybe read what Namo Bharat is in terms of FDI. Okay, that we have already discussed. Physical infrastructure. Yeah. So this another scheme, Pradhan Mantri Jeevan Jyoti Bima Yojana. This is how economists play with data, because the year in which you have launched this scheme, you have given that, therefore you will always see an increase in that. So I mean, we know how to play with data. So, but what is an aspirational district? What is an aspirational district? What parameters are included when you talk about an aspirational district? Then another thing, which is not mentioned here, but it is related. What is ODF? What is ODF plus and what is ODF plus plus? Another thing that you should read from this. Then I've already talked to you about this cervical cancer vaccination. Then I've talked to you about this UWIN. Just like you had CoWIN, you're using the same infrastructure for UWIN. Then Poshan 2 and Saksham Anganwadi. What was Poshan 1? How is Poshan 1 different from Poshan 2? This is a rechristened version of which scheme? Midday meal scheme. Who implements it? What are the problems in it? How you are improving in this particular scheme? Then another thing, Ayushman Bharat. You should know the details, the in-depth details of Ayushman Bharat, who are applicable. It's not applicable to everyone. You should have an Ayushman Bharat card for this. Now, the government has converted this into a cashless thing as well. Recently, there was an article that if you have a medical insurance, it will become cashless till the extent that you have. What was that news? You should know. But you should also know that ASHA workers and Anganwadi workers have now been included in the Ayushman Bharat scheme. Now, what are ASHA workers? What are Anganwadi workers? You should also know that in detail. Then Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana. You have increased the limit from you have already achieved 3 crore houses. You are now increasing to 5 crore. How much money is given to each household for this? What is the interest rate that is taken? It used to be, I think, 1.25 lakhs. I think they have now started to increase it to 2.5 lakhs because it was the case with PM Janman. You should also note a PM Janman scheme, the tribal scheme. That is another area. The tribal, the PVTGs you should know. And there was also some program that the Prime Minister had conducted for them. Forgetting that. There was a huge thing that they had conducted after G20. Forgot. Then for middle class also, they are promoting some housing scheme for middle class. What is the eligibility? How much of soft loans will be given to them? Then tourism, all right. Food processing. Now, one thing is, a question might come to you on the new limits that have been put to DAP as well as MOP. See, every soil needs 3 macronutrients and 1 micronutrient. Oh, actually, many micronutrients, but we talk about only one, which is called as NPKS: nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and sulfur. Now, this has to be used in a ratio of 4:2:1. But what happens in India is, because the fertilizer prices of potassium and phosphorus is very high, and the prices of urea is controlled, farmers in India use excessive urea in their land, because of which there is a lot of problem in terms of soil health, in terms of excessive fertilizers that you put. Our products are not sold outside because of phyto and phytosanitary conditions. Also, because of this, there is a lot of problems in the downstream rivers because of BOD, the biological oxygen demand that it hampers. So this is all connected to each other. And the soil health, the soil ratio, which should be 4:2:1, has now become at times 20, at times 60:1:1. That is why the government has a soil health card scheme. You should know what is the soil health card, and appropriately you should use fertilizers to it. So you should know all of this, and you should know what is this nano DAP that the government is introducing, which will increase the efficiency of phosphate. Being taken up by the plant, and you don't need so much phosphate. You can just use small amount of phosphate. Then Atmanirbhar oil seeds. So what are the oil seeds? What are the different kinds of edible oils we take? And every alternative year, there is a question on MSP. Every alternative year, I'm telling you, just check the 10 years. You should note all 24 items which come under MSP, and under which season. Is it Rabi season or Kharif season? What is the rough percentage in India in which its production happens? What is, and the major ones you should know, where is it produced? Agriculture has recently become a big theme for UPSC prelims. At least last year, there were a lot of questions on agriculture. So you know that there is some kind of tendency, you should prepare for it. And there used to be a book called as Prem Patel. No, not Prem Patel. Prem Patel for mapping. There used to be, I think there's still this book called Periyar, written by Arvind Kumar. So that's a very good compendium for Indian geography. And you can read a lot of this. So you should note crop wise pattern as well, that what kind of soil does it need, what kind of rainfall does it need. And once you know this, and you know India's geography and you know India's climate, you can automatically guess where it will be produced. Then you can automatically guess where in the world it will be produced, because you have your entire map with you as well, that okay, where is this different kinds of climate that are found. And that is why I say the last few chapters of Gochik Leong are extremely important. What is a Mediterranean climate like? What is a tundra climate like? What is a monsoonal climate like? You will get a lot of inferences out of it. So if that portion is very strong, your environment also becomes strong, your geography also becomes strong. So read, good emphasis on that. Then dairy development, you can read on that. Pradhan Mantri Matsya Sampada Yojana for your fisheries, for a blue revolution. So read in detail who is implementing this. Then that's about it. Maybe you can read about current account deficit in general. What is NPA, and taxations. Yes, taxation. What is tax buoyancy is another thing that you should note. What is tax buoyancy? Whether do we collect more from direct tax versus indirect tax? What is tax to GDP ratio? What is direct tax to GDP ratio and indirect tax GDP ratio? Which is better? Rupee comes from, rupee goes. This is all NREGA production linked scheme. Green hydrogen. What is green hydrogen? How is it different from blue hydrogen? How is it different from gray hydrogen? Revenue, that's it. So this is all about this year's budget. It's a small budget with few areas to focus on, but there is enough material for you to at least get 1 or 2 questions from this. So 4 marks out of reading only what we have discussed is a good gamble, or it's a good thing that in one class you are able to identify 4 marks there. So this is how you should think of the cost benefit analysis of reading something. So this is about it, folks. Any questions that you have, I can take them. And on Sunday, I will ask Nishchil, people with economics optional, I'll ask Nishchil and a couple of others. This year's AIR one for the Indian Economic Services. So I'll call him online. We'll have a discussion on IES and RBI since he cracked both. And maybe I can call a couple of more people from this year itself. They will discuss their strategies, how to prepare. That will also include your economics optional because it becomes a subsection of that. And rest, if you want to connect with me, I'm always available on WhatsApp. But you would have to wait very patiently. Some of the students would know if you have sent me a WhatsApp on Monday, I might reply it to you on next Sunday. So you would have to have that patience. It doesn't matter whether you send me voice notes or not. So I know when will I have time. Every Sunday I clear my messages because it becomes irritating when you see 300 unread messages and when you see the head of the institution saying that Siddharth, you don't reply to my messages also. So I have to take care of these things as well. So be patient, but I will eventually answer. And if you would like to become a part of D3, you can message me. It's from Monday to Friday at 6 a.m., but it will go to 5 a.m. very soon. So and for any other thing, I'll be more than happy to answer. Any doubts? Anyone? Okay. Thank you very much, folks. It's been a pleasure teaching. Hmm.